She jabbed her finger right into my face, her voice cracking as she screamed for the whole neighborhood to hear. "I don't know what kind of ghetto drug money you used to get into this neighborhood, but you and your kind aren't welcome here. That was my own backyard, my pool behind me, the grass I'd worked for my entire life under my feet, and in that moment I knew her reign of control was over." But to really understand how satisfying that instant was, we have to rewind to when I first set foot in Willow Creek Estates, when I thought I'd finally found peace. I had just made chief of police after 25 long years. I'd been a beat cop, a detective, a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, you name it. I did it. I missed holidays. I lost sleep. I sacrificed everything for that badge. And the promotion finally gave me a salary that allowed me to buy a home worth the grind. A 2-story brick house with a sprawling backyard, a pool with a waterfall feature, even blue lights that made it glow at night. After decades in cramped apartments, this felt like my reward, my sanctuary. I'd sit out there in the evenings, cold beer sweating in my hand, and I'd think, yeah, I finally made it. The neighbors on one side were quiet retirees, friendly but private. On the other side, though, that's where Karen lived. If anyone ever embodied the name, it was her. Mid-40s permanent scowl disguised by too much lip gloss, always in brand-new athleisure, but never breaking a sweat. The first time she approached me, I was on my knees planting flowers. She didn't introduce herself, didn't even say hello. She marched across my lawn and snapped, "The HOA has strict landscaping guidelines. I'll need to see your pre-approved plan for whatever that is." She waved at my petunias like they were toxic weeds. I smiled, dirt on my jeans, and said, "Good morning to you too. I'm your new neighbor." She stood there like she was announcing royalty. "I'm head of the welcoming committee and the aesthetics board. All exterior changes must be approved." Then she turned and left. That was my welcome to the neighborhood, no handshake, just a warning about flowers. Over the next few weeks, it became clear she'd appointed herself sheriff of Willow Creek. She texted me from an unknown number during a family barbecue at 3 in the afternoon. "Noise ordinance starts at 9:00 p.m. Please be considerate." She emailed me violation notices with photos of contractor vans outside my house. She stared at me from behind her pristine white fence. It was constant little stabs, never direct enough to fight back, but enough to remind me she considered me the outsider. I kept smiling, kept waving, even invited her over once. She bolted. My calmness, I realized, drove her insane. But while Karen was subtle in her tyranny, her son Braden was not. 19 years old, home from college, obnoxious as hell. Loud Mustang rattling windows at midnight, cocky smirk, pastel polo with the collar popped. I mostly ignored him. Kids act out, that's not a crime. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I overheard him on the phone in his backyard. "My parents are gone this weekend. Whole house is ours. The pool is sick, you gotta see it." At first I figured he'd host some friends, maybe a dozen kids, no big deal. But later, I caught him in the driveway with buddies bragging, "Tell everyone. Posted on Snap. Party of the summer, my place." My eyebrow went up. Tell everyone. That's how you get 100 kids in one night. I made a mental note to keep watch. Saturday rolled around, sun blazing, perfect pool day. Karen and her husband left in golf attire, shooting me their usual dirty look. Around 2, the cars started rolling in. Teenagers poured out with cases of beer and towels, and to my surprise they didn't head to Braden's. They came straight into my backyard, grinning at my pool like they owned it. "This?" the party one kid asked mid-stride. I blinked. No sun. Wrong house. Party's next door. They looked confused, shuffled away. Then more came. Girls in bikinis, groups of boys all marching straight toward my water. Over and over I had to wave them off. That's when it hit me. Braden hadn't invited the school to his pool. He'd invited them to mine. So I sat down in my favorite lawn chair, beer in hand, and waited. Finally, here he came strutting into my yard with his entourage like some 80s movie villain. "See? What did I tell you guys?" He spread his arms to my pool. One friend nudged him, whispering, pointing at me. Braden froze, then puffed his chest. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped. I took a long sip, set the beer down, looked him dead in the eye. "I live here. Question is, what are you doing here? Braden, and why are you sending the whole school to my house?" He went red instantly. "This is my party. My dad knows the owner said I could use the pool. So pack your cooler and get out before I have you thrown out for trespassing." The arrogance almost made me laugh out loud. "Is that so?" I leaned back. His friends shifted uneasily, the crowd of kids growing watching. "So, let me get this straight. You invited 100 minors to trespass, drink alcohol, and now you're trying to evict the homeowner?" His face purpled. "This isn't your house, squatter. The guy who lives here's some rich white dude. My dad plays golf with him. He scrambled for a name, Albright Henderson, like he'd pulled it from Monopoly." I smiled wide. "Funny, because I pay the taxes here. And the bills. You sure you've got the right place?" The whispers in the crowd turned to gasps. He doubled down. "Either leave or I'll call the cops. They're not taking your side over mine." That was it. The golden word. I stood up slowly, towering over him. "Calling the cops." "That's the best idea you've had all day." His eyes flickered. I reached into my pocket, flipped open my wallet badge gleaming in the sun. "Chief of Police. And you're on my property. You've got 2 minutes to clear every single kid off my lawn before I make a call that will bring half the force down this street. And trust me, son, you do not want that." Silence. Then panic. Braden's face drained of blood. His friends looked ready to faint. "Party's over," he squeaked, turning to the crowd. Teenagers scattered like roaches, sprinting to cars peeling out down the street. Within minutes, the yard was empty except for Braden and his 2 terrified buddies. I told him plainly, "Clean up your mess. And let me be clear, if you or your friends ever set foot on my property again, I'll make sure you learn what consequences really mean." He nodded, humiliated, before stumbling back to his house. I thought maybe that would be the end, but of course it wasn't. Minutes later, her SUV screeched back into the driveway. Karen stormed into my yard, eyes blazing, visor, crooked fists clenched. "You," she hissed. "You humiliated my son. You threatened him. You terrorized him." I stayed seated, calm as ever. "Ma'am, your son invited 100 kids to break the law in my backyard. That's not terror. That's called a reality check." She stepped closer, shaking. And then she spat the line she'd been holding in since day one. "I don't know what kind of ghetto drug money got you here, but you and your kind are not welcome." I let the words hang. Ugly. Venomous. My jaw tightened, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of rage. I asked quietly, "Are you finished?" She ranted about suing me, calling the police. I tilted my head. "Funny, your son threatened that too." "Here's the thing, when you call the police eventually, that call comes to me. Chief Williams. This is my house, that's my pool, and your son just committed crimes on my property." Her face went slack pale as chalk. She stammered apologies, backpedaled, begged me not to press charges. I didn't bother arguing. I simply called a patrol sergeant, requested an educational house visit for Braden, and watched as her world cracked open. But Karen didn't give up. No, she turned to the HOA. The next morning, a violation notice was taped to my door, non-approved petunias. The next day, garbage cans out too long. The day after that, garden hose coiled incorrectly. Paper cuts every morning. I laughed at first, but then I felt the weight. Was this my life now? Would I fight every petty ticket until I lost my sanity? One night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at those notices, and for the first time in my career, I thought maybe I should just leave. Maybe I was wrong to think I belonged here. I was exhausted, drained, doubting myself. But then I opened the HOA rulebook. 128 pages of bylaws, most ignored by everyone except her. And as I read, something shifted. She wanted a war of rules. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I'd spent my life mastering law procedure loopholes, and buried in that book was her undoing. Her fence wasn't permitted. HOA meetings hadn't been held in 2 years. And the landscaping contract, it was awarded exclusively to her husband's company. No bids, no oversight, just HOA money funneled into their pockets. Fraud wrapped in hypocrisy. Suddenly, I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the prosecution. I gathered allies. The couple with the wind chimes. Sarah, a young lawyer down the street. George, a retired accountant. We formed our little resistance ready to face her on her chosen battlefield. And sure enough, she called a special HOA meeting, hoping to turn the neighborhood against me. Instead, it became her trial. That night, the clubhouse was packed, buzzing with tension. Karen sat at the front trying to look composed, but her voice trembled as she opened with, "Certain residents have shown disregard for community standards." Sarah shot up instantly. "Point of order. This agenda violates Bylaw 42. Any discussion of a resident's behavior is out of order." Murmurs spread. Round 1 to us. George asked about the landscaping contract demanded meeting minutes. None existed. I stood and calmly laid out the truth. Your son's illegal party. Your racist outburst. Your husband's company draining our HOA funds. And here I held up the city citation. Your fence. Karen. Completely illegal. Ordered torn down. The room exploded. Neighbors shouted furious. What about my fine for wind chimes? What about our door color? Karen's husband stared at the floor ashamed. She looked cornered, stammering denials, but the evidence was undeniable. Within minutes, motions were made. Vote of no confidence freeze. HOA accounts demand full audit. Almost unanimous. Karen and her husband gathered their papers, faces ghostly white, and fled the clubhouse under a hail of questions and accusations. That was the end of her kingdom. The HOA stripped her of power, the fence ordered down, her financial scam exposed. A week later, a for sale sign appeared in their yard. They left Willow Creek Estates in disgrace, their empire of petty control crumbling behind them. And me, I stayed. Because bullies only win if you let them.